Hi everyone, I'm Pastor Kimberly. I'm so glad you decided to join us for our Ash Wednesday worship experience today. Whether you're outdoors or online, we're glad you're here. I want to share a little bit of a message for you to meditate on today based on the scripture you just heard. First, let me start with a question. Let's pretend that this were a hot, beautiful day and you were getting really overheated and thirsty. What would you do? Well, if you're like me, you might dig in your pocket, pull out some quarters, and head to a vending machine where you can stick them in and get out a nice cool drink. But if you get to that vending machine and you put in your quarters and you suddenly realize that this vending machine is located in Mexico or in an amusement park where they have their own currency, and the currency you have isn't working, then you're going to get nothing out of that vending machine, and you're going to remain thirsty on that hot day. Keep that in mind for just a minute, because what that's about is that when we know what we want and need and we put in the wrong currency, we're not going to get out anything that we want. So today marks Ash Wednesday. It's the beginning of the season of Lent that Christians celebrate, a great time for us to pause and look inside of ourselves, to reflect more deeply on our lives, to make some changes for the long term, and to realize how many times we turn away from God. We make mistakes that hurt ourselves and others, and we can even be adopting practices and attitudes that are harmful to our souls. So Lent gives us the chance to stop and look, to make some changes, choose that different path, listen closer to God, and to get ready for what is the heart of our faith, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So my question for you today is, what are you longing for in your life? What are you hoping for that you're not getting? And could it be that you're using the wrong currency? That the vending machine doesn't accept what you're putting in, or whatever you're putting in comes out with something different? Now, this happens to me in life sometimes at home when I really want some peace and quiet from my own mental processes and my children, and I sit there and say, "Come on, everybody be quiet, I just want some peace." Well, I'm kind of angrily putting currency into the vending machine, and it's not going to give me the peace that I want. Hasn't worked, never will, I don't think. And maybe you have something like that in your life too. In our story today, the people had been in slavery in Egypt for a long time. And God heard their cries and knew they needed to get out. And so God brought them out. And God knew they were both afraid and worried and also ready for something new. So he didn't want to frighten them. But God needed to do two things. First, send a message that God is powerful and in charge and can give us what we need. And secondly, he needed to send a message back to Egypt saying, they're not coming back. So God led the people out, and he whirled them around and put them by the Red Sea, a little longer than they had to be there. So here they were with this huge sea on one side and Egypt on the other, and Pharaoh got the idea, if the people are sitting there, I can go get them and bring them back. So Pharaoh amassed his army, and he took off after the people. Well, the people looked and they saw Pharaoh coming, and they looked and they saw the Red Sea on the other side, and they were trapped. And they needed to get to safety. They needed and longed for freedom and the promise of new life. But the currency they were putting in the vending machine was panic. They were throwing in those coins as fast as they could and pushing the button, and that wasn't going to open the doors. But God, in God's grace and mercy, met them where they were. God opened the Red Sea for them and let them walk through. The currency that they needed to put in was trust. God was seeking their trust in him for the journey ahead. And God showed them how trustworthy God was. Now, you know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping you're going to get better results. Well, the same thing is true in our lives. When we have something that we're longing for, something that we know we need, and we keep putting the wrong currency in the vending machine and thinking that somehow we're going to get out what we need, God calls us to stop and to think and to ask, what are we seeking? What currency are we using? And what might work better? What currency might we need instead? And how can we take this time in Lent with God to make some changes, to use a different currency, and to help move our relationships with God and others onto a new path?